Well, here it is, January 14th, 2022, my 2-year Carniversary. And I have a lot to tell you guys about. I have been making so many notes trying to go back and really look at all of the things that I was doing at the time I started on this diet, the medicines I was on, the health issues I had, the things that I was doing to my body that weren't so good, the foods I was eating. A lot of times I thought I was actually trying to eat healthy. And now when I look back at it, it just seems like a day and night difference to the way I thought then and the way I think now. Lion diet for 2 years has totally turned my life inside out and upside down. Everything was a little bit out of kilter before, and I didn't realize how much food had to do with that. If you were going through something similar to what I was experiencing, one of the best ways to know that is to hear a little bit about what I was experiencing then. It's causing me to have to maybe share some things that I'm not very comfortable sharing, especially with the world, but at the same time, I think it's going to be important for a lot of people to be able to see their way forward. So I'm willing to do it, because if it wasn't for Dr. Peterson sharing his story and Michaela Peterson sharing her story, I wouldn't have taken the steps that I've taken. And I know a lot of people talk about the amount of discipline that I've had on this diet, especially now that I've lost all this weight and then I look like a whole different person. People just assume that, oh, well, you know, you're already in good shape. It's easy for you to get that way. I had to struggle with this my whole life. My whole life I was always wondering why do I have to have a belly? Why do I have to have these big love handles? Why do I have to have, you know, fat in the face and big earlobes and fat on my back and all this stuff? Even when I got in shape when I was younger, when I started getting into bodybuilding and getting into wrestling and things like that, I still felt like I was never able to achieve what I was looking to achieve with my body. And then as I got older and sunk into the jobs and the daily grind of life, it got very easy just to not worry about that because I had to worry about so many other things. But I neglected to take care of myself. And only when I was 48 and I started this diet did I realize the importance of making sure that I need to take care of my health. I have 2 young stepsons, and I've been raising them for a long time. And I want to be here to see them grow and mature and to learn about life, the things that they need to be prepared for the world. So we're going to touch on the physical, we're going to touch on some mental changes, we're going to touch on some spiritual changes. There's so much information I want to cover. It might even get into a little bit of politics. That's the nature of this. I didn't think that starting a diet was going to be a political fight, but the more I look at what's going on in the world, I realize it's going to be a political fight. So we've got to be able to take a stand for some things that we believe in if we want to continue to eat healthy too. It should be a good show. And I just got off another long shift last night. It's very close to my bedtime, so I'm going to be working on this over the next day or two, hopefully, and be able to get everything out for you. I just appreciate you guys indulging me and waiting as long as you have. Let's get into it. This is my work day time. It's about 3:30 in the morning right now. It's the only time I really have to come start working on these videos. Unfortunately, it's about 30 degrees out here. I'm freezing. But it's what I gotta do. I'm working a graveyard shift job and I happen to be off tonight. So I wanted to be able to come and start talking about what it's been like for me in this 2 years that I've been on Lion Diet. I'm having some Warrior Burger right now. Warrior Burger is a mixture of the grass-fed, grass-finished cow meat that I got from the whole cow I buy from my rancher up in Georgia. And it's also the animal's heart, kidneys, and liver mixed in with the burger meat. So you don't get as much of the organ taste if you're not a big organ fan, but you get a delicious piece of meat that gives you a lot of energy and nutrients. So anyway, a lot of people have been asking me, what were your issues when you came into this diet? What led you to start doing this diet? So I'm just going to outline what I had going on at the time. I think a couple of my surgeries are very key to this issue. I had my gallbladder removed in 2002 when I was 29. And when they did that surgery, they did it laparoscopically through my belly button, going through the abdominal wall and up to the liver to remove the gallbladder. Then a few years later, it was 2007, I had a hernia in that area where they went through my abdominal wall. My intestines were literally poking through the abdominal wall. I could feel it. It felt like a little snake moving around in there. It was the strangest thing. And they had put a mesh in initially. I thought they were repairing the mesh when they went back in. I've since discovered I don't know what they did, because I can't seem to find out what's going on with that area, because it still bothers me a lot, and I've had it looked at with CT scans. They said they don't see a mesh. I don't know that they could see a mesh with a CT scan. Anyway, those 2 last surgeries are the ones that I think have really escalated some of the gut issues I was having. So I thought it was important to mention those. And some of the diagnoses that I had just before starting this diet, mostly my doctor would just say, we don't know what's wrong with you. I remember seeing an emergency room doctor that I went in to see when I was in terrible pain in my gut area, so much so that my mother called the ambulance because I had passed out from the pain. But when I woke up in the hospital, I was still in pain all night long, and they didn't give me anything that I know of to deal with the pain. But when the doctor came in the morning, he just looked at me and asked, what do you want us to do? And I thought, I want you to fix the problem. But he couldn't tell me what the problem was. In the years leading up to starting Lion Diet, I also went through something called diverticulitis, which is sort of like left side appendicitis. But I didn't have to have anything removed, thankfully. It got to the point where it almost burst because it got so inflamed in that part of my bowel area that it was, oh my gosh, just to even touch it lightly hurt terribly. My doctor said that, well, once you've had that, you're going to have it again. Thankfully, I started Lion Diet not too long after that, so I haven't had it since. Blood pressure is something that I had dealt with since my late 20s. I had had high blood pressure. I was taking varying amounts of lisinopril throughout the years, and I truly believe that leaky gut is the final diagnosis that I should have had but never received from the doctors. Now, why they wouldn't give me any diagnosis to that effect with all the symptoms I had that seemed to point in that direction, I'll never know. But I know that to this day, when I have vegetables or anything that has lectins in it, unless I cook them out really good, it kills my gut. It hurts right in that area where I had that belly button surgery done too, or that surgery near my belly button. I also have allergies to certain foods, so it kind of worked out good to switch to a diet like this for me, because some of my favorite things included tomatoes and sweet potatoes, and those are 2 things that it turns out I'm allergic to. And tomatoes are in just about everything, especially processed foods. So if you're allergic to tomatoes, that doesn't help very much at all. I'm also allergic to fish, not shellfish, but regular fish. I thought that was odd, but it turns out, according to the doctors again, that shellfish allergies are actually less prevalent than fish allergies. I also happen to be allergic to all grasses and a lot of different trees, but I also was having a lot of headaches. From my research, I think the headaches were coming from a combination of a few things, 2 of the most important ones being stress and that I was using medical cannabis. Based on the description from Dr. Huberman's video talking about how cannabis affects the brain area and where it can cause pain, it's exactly where I was having those pains. I was having incessant constipation. Almost every morning I'd wake up terribly constipated, so bad so that I would have to go soak in a bathtub for an hour before I felt like I could actually go to the bathroom, and sometimes even then it wouldn't help. And on top of that, I would have occasional diarrhea. Very confusing symptoms to be dealing with, and this was even before I was on Lion Diet. So sometimes I still deal with a little bit of hard stool and a little bit of diarrhea, but nothing like I used to. So I have no complaints. It's just something that's not a problem for me anymore. I had high anxiety and I had depression symptoms. I was still addicted to nicotine. I had quit smoking after many years. I started smoking when I was very young. I think I was about 15 when I started smoking regularly. Cigarettes were something that had been a part of my life almost my entire life, up until the mid-2000s when I finally stopped smoking cigarettes, but then I would dabble with them every once in a while, and they had started to weasel their way in before I started vaping, and vaping really helped me to stay away from it altogether. So vape was the next new addiction that I had, and I was on vape at the time that I started this diet. And then I don't know if I would call it an addiction, but I sure like to have I like to have a glass of bourbon at least once a night, almost every night. And sometimes it would turn into 2 glasses, or I don't know how many glasses, because very often it would just become a little more than I should have had. And combining that with my stress and anxiety was not a good combination, as I've studied when I learned from people like Dr. Huberman and Dr. Peterson, that's a horrible combination, is mixing alcohol with high stress. And then lastly was the addiction that I thought was the least important, but may turn out to have been the most important, was my addiction to sugar. Sugar and processed foods were a big part of my diet. I ate out a lot too, a lot of fast food. And now I tried to avoid the worst things like Taco Bell and things like that. I would do a lot of Hardee's low carb burgers and things because I knew low carb was a good idea. But I would still like have mayonnaise with it or ketchup. And I was just basically avoiding the bread for the most part. But sugar was the big addiction that I think was really hurting me more than anything else. I thought I did them all in moderation, but they were becoming more and more common. It wasn't until I tried to put these things out of my life that I realized the hold they had on me. Now, those are the issues that I had coming into Lion Diet. After 2 years of eating this way, let's talk about the issues I have now. Oh man, yeah, I had to go inside and finish my food. It's so cold out here. But let's get into the issues that I don't have anymore. Now let's see, what diagnosis do I have now and what meds do I take now? The answer is none on both counts. I don't have any diagnosis from the doctor of any current issues at all. I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have diverticulitis or any issues with that. I don't have any anxiety that's diagnosable anymore. You know, changing your diet for food was the only thing I was thinking of initially. I didn't think it was going to have such an effect on other areas. Oh, these are the medications that I was on when I started Lion Diet. I was taking lisinopril, 20 milligrams a day. I was also taking hydrochlorothiazide, which was an additional booster for helping my blood pressure issue. I was on montelukast for breathing issues. I was taking levocetirizine. Levocetirizine is a really strong antihistamine. You might know it by its brand name, Xyzal. My doctor said it was like cetirizine on steroids, and cetirizine is like Allegra, I believe, or something similar to that. But I used to take all kind of antihistamines. I still could probably use an antihistamine, but I haven't used any after my first month or so on Lion Diet. And I still have reactions to things like grass and cats and a number of other things, and I haven't tried any of the foods that I was allergic to, so I don't know how I respond to those, but I may have to get around to doing that sometime, just so that I can make sure that I'm covering all the things that could be getting better. I was taking aspirin, 81 milligrams, because the doctor was concerned about my heart. My pulse used to run at a resting rate of about 99 to 100 beats per minute. That's not a very good resting heart rate. I was also taking testosterone cypionate because I had erectile dysfunction diagnosed back in 2018, and the doctor suggested that that might be able to help. Now, I don't know much about taking testosterone or TRT or any of the stuff that men talk about when it comes to getting in shape, but I've come to learn since then that this is the same thing that they're taking if they want to build muscle. Now, I wasn't taking very much. I was taking half of a cc every week, and I just, like I say, I thought that was helping with my ability to perform. And then when I tried to quit that, the doctor told me that if I do quit that, it's probably going to affect my anxiety issues even more. And I had a lot of stress in my life, and he said that changing that could really cause me to go into a funk. So I didn't get rid of that initially. I did actually get rid of it right when I first started doing Lion Diet, because I stopped all my medicines before I went to see my doctor. So he took me off of everything, but he suggested I continue with the testosterone. And I did so under protest. I really didn't want to, but I felt like I needed to based on what he was saying. Let's see, what else was I on? I was taking omeprazole, 40 milligrams every day. I was taking some other medications that I can't recall, but I did have a list of all the supplements I was taking at the time, things that I was taking that I thought I needed to be healthy, and I had been taking for well over a year and still not seeing any real big benefit from. I was taking a hair, skin, and nails multivitamin. I was taking biozinc, glucosamine sulfate, coconut oil extract, the super enzymes, bee pollen, white oak bark, fiber cotton, vitamin C powder, flaxseed oil and omega-3, milk thistle, calcium, magnesium, and zinc with D3, acidophilus, vitamin E, 400 IUs, L-lysine, B-rite, a men's one a day, and I was taking a turmeric complex supplement. I was taking niacin 500 milligrams, CoQ10 100 milligrams, and something called Blood Boost, which was basically nitric oxide, and I was taking a half dose of that. Now let's get back to the issues that I have. I mentioned that I don't have any of the diagnoses anymore. I'm not taking any of the medication anymore, and I'm not taking any of those supplements anymore. I did start supplementing a couple of things after about a year and a half on this diet though, before I realized that I might be low on iodine, because I wasn't having any seafood at all, or any kelp or anything that would come from the sea. And I realized that iodine was a big part of hormone function. Well, testosterone's a hormone, and I was still using testosterone up until a year ago. The more I studied on it, the more I realized I was probably doing myself more harm than good. Not only have I been off of testosterone for a year, but I don't have any issues with what I started testosterone for. And that's a big deal for me, and I just don't need it. Now, my last blood work check, my numbers were back to where they were, but I'm hoping to get a new blood work check in the next few months, which will be close to a little more than half a year right now. But I have a feeling my numbers are better than they were. My doctor even said she was surprised that my numbers didn't go down much lower than they were before I started, because I had been on testosterone for close to 4 years. And she said that typically if you quit, then your numbers are going to drop well below what they were before, because your body's no longer producing like it should. I truly believe that this diet has helped me to keep my testosterone production where it should be, and if not, bring it back to where it wasn't before, into a higher level. But that's something I gotta wait to find out. So hopefully a future video I'll be able to share that with you. I don't like going to see the doctor anymore. I don't have a need to go see the doctor anymore. The only reason I really need to go see the doctor is because I got about 1 billion people asking me all the time about blood work numbers. And I gotta tell you, the more I have studied blood work, the more I have realized that blood work is BS for the most part. Because most of the diagnosis they uses information that's not valid anymore when it comes to determining what's going on in your body. A lot of the blood work numbers, the things that determine whether something is high or low, is actually determined by the fact that they're judging based on the scale of the current population of unhealthy people. You know, based on what I've read in several areas, including Dr. Robert Lustig's book, Metabolical, where he talked about 88% of the American population has some kind of metabolic disorder. And if that's what we're using for the baseline for what blood work numbers are, it's no wonder it's hard to get a straight answer. But when I would ask my doctor to explain blood work, it always seemed like he was using conjecture, a lot of guessing. As George Carlin used to say, it's just a bunch of guessing in white coats. So I think there are some numbers you can glean from it that are helpful. It really just depends on who you ask and what they're looking at, and if they're asking the right questions. So I don't put as much faith in blood work numbers, because most people who are looking at blood work are just looking to see, is this high, is this low, and does it fall into the parameters of these scales, and they don't even know why the scales are what they are. They're just trying to get numbers that make them feel good, and those numbers don't make me feel good. What makes me feel good is feeling good, and that's how I feel on this diet. Well, since I've been doing iodine now for several months, I am really starting to see a lot of the benefits, not only in the fact that I'm not as sensitive to cold, but my eyes seem to have less bagginess to them. And I have a lot more energy than I did over the summer. So I'm seeing real benefits from taking iodine. I had been doing a small supplement with Lugol's. I was taking about 3 times the normal dose of Lugol's. Well, now I take about 20 times the normal dose of what Lugol's would be in a pill form. And people always ask me what that is. I'll put a link in the description. I'm not saying I recommend it as being the best. It's just something that's worked for me lately. And the other supplement I've been taking is D3, because my most recent blood work showed that I was low in D3. And I thought, gosh, that's amazing. I live in Florida and I go walking every day. How could I be low in D3? But then I realized I usually go walking in the morning when the sun is the lowest in the sky, and it has to penetrate through a lot more atmosphere to get to you. So I'm not getting the sun that I would need going walking in the morning, even still. Lately I've been getting D3 the old-fashioned way, when it's not freezing cold like it was 2 days ago. 2 days ago I was outside in 78-degree weather getting a suntan, and now today it's going to be 29 degrees as the low while I sit out here and talk to you guys. So the weather has been crazy lately, but the best way to get your vitamin D is to get it from the sun. But those are the only 2 supplements I've been taking, and that's only because I showed low on both of them. You know, there's videos where I mentioned that you get everything you need from the meat that's in ruminant meat. Well, iodine is one that I think that I was needing more of, and vitamin D doesn't really come from food as much as it does from the sun, so that was something that I just wasn't getting enough of. I spend too much time indoors. It's taken me a long time to arrive at this place that I'm at now, where I needed to be able to talk about these things, because I came from a bad place entering this diet. I was in a place of self-deception, self-indulgence, and ultimately self-absorption, and to the point I couldn't empathize with people at all. I'd gotten to where all I could think about was how everything people did was bothering me. To me, these represent the skills of an arrogant narcissist, and it's something an arrogant narcissist won't recognize in himself. Seems like everybody around you will notice those skills that you have, and they'll want to get as far away from you as they can. But you don't seem to see them because all you see is fault finding in everyone else. At least that was the case for me. I never would have realized how much my addictions were contributing to that until I was able to eliminate them slowly on this new way of eating. I don't really research this way of eating as much as I research things like history, philosophy, psychology, and most importantly, scripture and Bible doctrine. But none of that research was able to allow me to smell the arrogance I was imprisoned by, nor how my pleasure-seeking addictions were perpetuating the security of my own prison. Now I only have a few addictions, but they're really all healthy. Studying scripture, spending time with my family, reading books, and doing the work that I need to do to take care of my family. I see any type of laborious work as meaningful, but my work encouraging others is by far the most meaningful thing for me. Having put the addictions behind me, no longer having any of the things that I mentioned before. I don't drink coffee. I don't vape anymore. People have asked me how I quit vaping. I've talked about it in previous videos when I was in the process of going through it. It took me a while. I had to wean down off of the nicotine. I even got down to where I was taking the smallest dose I could buy, which was 1.5 milligrams of nicotine in the bottles that I had, or however they measure it. It was the lowest number though. And I was taking a zero nic bottle and the lowest dose bottle and mixing them together when I was making my vape so that I'd even have less, until finally I got down to where I was using zero nicotine. Doing that for a period of about 3 or 4 months until I was the zero nic, and then I was trying to leave my vape somewhere else as much as I could throughout the day so that I'd have to go find it when I wanted it rather than always having it there to puff on all the time. But that's how I wound up finally quitting that. That was a difficult one, but not the only one that was difficult. I quit drinking even before that. I got to the point where putting food in my body was so important that I put good food in my body that I started to look at what I was drinking and saying, why do I want this? The alcohol converts into sugar, which causes me to have more problems. It's got wheat in it, and barley, and hops, and things that are not on my diet. So it got easier and easier to mentally not want beer and alcohol. Now, I'm not saying that alcohol and other things that you might want to enjoy are necessarily so bad that you can't ever do them. But if you're like me, and this is what I mean by like me, have you ever said to people, I have an addictive personality. I tend to get addicted to things I like, and I overdo them. If you're that type of person, you probably need to stay away from the things that you're addicted to altogether. I didn't think that was the case for me, but I've come to realize since then that the only way for me to have real happiness, to have real satisfaction in how I feel about myself and how I deal with life's anxieties and stresses and problems, is not to indulge in those things at all. Because once I've gotten all this poison and junk out of my body, I feel high on life. I'm just enjoying the way I feel on a regular basis. So I don't need them anymore. And I realize now more than ever that they were chains. They were things that were dragging me down. They weren't something I was free to do. They were something restricting my freedom to be who I really am. So again, There's nothing wrong with certain pleasures if you're able to imbibe in them on a moderate basis and in the right context without going overboard and so on and so forth. That's healthy for you. But for some people like me, you may just have to abstain altogether. But it's nice being free of all these things. And that's a big part of the Ferrigno Freedom aspect of this channel. Well, I guess yesterday's weather forecast about today's low temperature was a little bit off because it said it was going to be a low of 29 today, and it's 27 degrees right now. I gotta say, I am really feeling it from this job that I do. For those of you who don't know, I'm a package handler for a large company that delivers packages. I don't want to mention which on YouTube because I know they're particular about that. And I don't want to jeopardize my potential at this place. I gotta keep food on the table and a roof over my family's head, so I'm doing the best I can. I did hurt my back this week, doing a lot of the heavy lifting, fast moving that we do. And it's not bad hurt, it's just I think I'm pinching a nerve somewhere, because when I lay down to go to sleep now, it doesn't matter if I lay on my back or either side or even on my face, my right arm goes completely numb within about an hour. So the past 2 sleeping sessions, I woke up so many times I didn't get enough sleep. So I've been very tired, and I'm very tired today. This is my one day off. So I'm trying to spend it focusing on this video because I've been promising to do this for you guys for some time now. And I don't like not sticking to my promises. I'm trying to head up here and see if I can catch the sunrise. I'm a little late getting out at 7:10 right now. The sun comes up at 7:24 and it takes me a little more than 15 minutes to get there to where I can get a good view of it. And you know, that's something else that since I've been doing this diet, I've learned to appreciate nature and natural things more than I ever have. I've always been an indoors guy, an electronics guy, gizmos and toys and electronic doodads. That's always been my thing. Never really liked to get out much. What I have been able to do with this diet has changed everything. Now I do want to get into a little bit of what I was eating. You can go back and watch my earlier videos and get a much better look at this. I can't fit everything about 2 years into one short video, but I'm doing my best to try to get this into one 2-year Carniversary video for you. The first 125 days, when I made my 125 days on lion diet video, I was extremely strict. I did make a few mistakes along the way, and I even comment on those in the video, but I was extremely strict. And then for a little while after I made that 125 day video, I started having a few beers again and some things like that. But very shortly after, I started to wean back off of that because I realized I don't want to get out of this lifestyle. And really having a YouTube channel helped with that, because you guys have helped push me along as much as I've helped a lot of you push along. And that's the bigger reason why I keep doing this, even more than the income that I get from YouTube and from the few affiliates I have. And I'm thankful for that income, and I'm thankful for those affiliates. But I gotta say, I picked up all those affiliates along the way. I never want to talk about anything on this channel that I don't believe in. And if I spend the money to buy something, I probably believed in it enough to buy it. It was when I learned to start air frying steaks from frozen. Because at the beginning of this diet, I just started, you know, cooking on the stove on a Teflon plate or whatever. I don't know what Teflon is. I just know that the plates have something on them that makes them non-stick. And I was cooking on plates like that, and I hated all the grease and the mess and the cleanup. And then I started using a grill that we had, but that was a lot of cleanup and mess, and I didn't really care for cooking on gas too much. And I had to spend more time cleaning the grill than I did making food. And it was hard to fit just making food into my schedule. Then I found the air fryer. We had been given an air fryer and I didn't know what to do with it. And when I made a previous video recently about the air fryer, I forgot my very first air fryer was a gift. And it was a small one. I could barely fit one steak in it. And then I bought a larger one at Sam's Club.
And that allowed me to fit 2 steaks real easy, and maybe even 3 if they were small enough. And I got to where I was cooking those, you know, 375 degrees to 400 degrees. And I was knocking out a steak in about 13 minutes or so. 13 to 16 minutes, I can't remember, but it depends on the size. The thickness of the steak really makes a difference. So when you guys I hear a lot of people asking me about times and how long it takes. It really depends on what you like and how thick the steak is, how much meat is in the steak, how many pounds the steak is or ounces. So I'm no expert on that stuff. Everybody has their recipes and all that. I don't have that. I play it by ear every time. I'm usually in a hurry and I'm racing through life to get from one thing to the next. Like right now, I mean, I'm squeezing in a walk while I'm trying to do this. If it wasn't for the fact that I hurt my back, like I mentioned earlier, then I would be rucking with my 40-pound pack on. But right now, my back is kind of sore. So I'm giving it a rest today. But I wanted to take Sam for a walk. Sam joined me on this diet, by the way. I was out walking one day. You know, walking was something that I always wanted to be able to do, but I talked about, yes, I'm gonna get out. And every once in a while, I'd go walk around the retirement home that I was running. But it was never enough to get a sweat going, and it never felt like I was accomplishing anything. But once I started losing the weight, I started feeling the energy to want to get out and exercise. And then I started walking. I would walk for 30 minutes, and then I would walk, you know, starting to look at going a mile, then 2 miles. Eventually I got up to where I was walking 7 miles, but that took a long time, and I eventually narrowed it down to 3 miles. So I was out walking one day on one of those walks, and I was talking to you guys actually when it happened. So there's a video out there where you can see where I met Sam. But he just joined me one day while I was out on a walk. And I thought, well, where did you come from? And he walked with me all the way home. And then my wife put some messages out on Facebook to some of the animal groups she's in, because she's a super animal lover. She's nuts about them. But she knows how to help people find their lost dogs and help rehome dogs that are lost or mistreated. And we found out who the owner of the dog was and contacted him. But it turns out he was an older man who was not able to really handle having a dog right now. And even though he had said he paid $1,200 for this mini golden doodle just a couple of years, or maybe a year before, I don't remember when, but it was before, obviously, he lost the dog. His attitude was, hey, if you want to take care of him, you can have him. And he is so sweet and loving, we just decided we would keep him. Even though it wasn't the opportune time to have a dog, I've been thankful because he's a good dog. And he loves to go on walks, and sometimes he reminds me, hey, we need to go for a walk today. So I'm glad to be out here able to do this. And that's part of this journey too. Just getting back to nature and loving my animals. You know, I talked about how I was in a bad place before. I think my dogs could sense it too, because there was a period there before we had Sam where my other dogs, I could tell they were afraid of me. I didn't hurt them, but I would get angry with them, and I didn't want them around me. They were bothering me. And now those same dogs, when I come home, they come racing to the car to meet me, and they jump up and down, and they're happy to see me home. That's part of what changed on this diet. The mental part for me that changed has been dramatic. Now, I've done a little bit of studies about some of the mental side of this, and getting rid of the addictions, the dopamine kicks that were causing me to chase things that are not healthy. Those short-term spikes in dopamine would lead to vast drops in dopamine. And there's a whole lot that I've mentioned about this before. I can't remember what the other chemical is. That prolactin, I think it is the one that's produced after your dopamine drop, and it causes you to actually go lower than you were before, which constantly leads you into a depressive state. And doing things like pot or alcohol or even sex can cause you to have a push upward that causes you to go down further than you were. And if you keep going in that way, you're in a constant cycle of moving downward. And that's where I was. I know that because now I can face the hardships of life with a smile. There was a time I couldn't work a job like I'm doing now. I used to work jobs where I'm used to using my brain and my mouth to get by. And I was comfortable with that because I didn't have to be out in the elements. I could be indoors talking to people, comfortable. But there's something about comfort that can really wreck you if you decide that you're going to chase that only. And I think I was putting a little too much emphasis on chasing that. You know, the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle, the wanting to have that 5 o'clock somewhere in ocean all the time. Don't get me wrong, once again, I'm all for having a good time and having fun with people. But I think when we focus too much on what we're drinking and what we're taking part in to actually enjoy the other people, we're missing out on the best parts of life. Now I find tremendous enjoyment in strenuous labor and hard work, even when it does leave me with a pinched nerve in my back once in a while, and some aches and pains that I have in my hands from lifting all those heavy boxes all the time. The pains just aren't what they used to be to me before. It used to be the pain would make me so angry that I would get frustrated and want to quit. But now I look at the difficulties and the pains in life and the hard tasks and just say, bring it on. Let's do it. Let's get through it. Let's win this victory today. And I feel so much better. I don't have a need for something to eliminate my anxiety and depression. I still get the blues sometimes, but usually I just realize I'm focused on myself and that goes away. You know, stop having self-pity and you can get through those moments. At least that's what it worked for me. And I'm telling you, if it wasn't for Lion Diet, I wouldn't be able to be at that point. But I'm so much more relaxed, not chasing after something that a substance is going to do for me. And this is where the part about sugar really comes into play. I didn't realize how bad it was. I had an idea. I could feel that there was something wrong with our food supply system, and that I would look at the boxes of things we're buying these days, pancakes that tasted like Fruity Pebbles. I mean, aren't pancakes sugary enough without us having to have them taste like Fruity Pebbles too? I mean, we've gone insane with the processed foods, and we just buy them and eat them, and we don't think anything of it. But these companies, thanks to the FDA and the complicity that comes from the cronyism that has taken over our system, they just rubber stamp a lot of things in that are completely unhealthy for us, saying that they're generally recognized as safe. GRAS. It's something well known within the FDA that allows these companies to use thousands of new products because they're similar enough to another product to just get accepted automatically. I mean, when I say automatically, it's not like somebody looks at it and says, okay, yeah, that is similar enough. It's more like it is on the GRAS list, so they just accept it. They don't even know if it's on the GRAS list because they don't know what these chemicals are. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that so much, but I do want to say that when I read Dr. Robert Lustig's book, Metabolical, here just recently, I just finished it, it opened my eyes to a lot of what's been going on in the major food and big pharma that is a problem. Now, one problem I have with getting on to major food and big pharma is that I am not anti-capitalist. I just think that what's happening here is cronyism, not capitalism. The way our government has allowed business to buy them out is where the problem is. And that's just human nature, that people are going to do what they can get away with. And if government is going to let them get away with it, they're going to get away with stealing the whole store, which is what's going on. But I would encourage you to read the book. I'm not a big fan of his final solution. Hopefully my battery will hang around long enough for me to share this last part here before I get home and change batteries. But Dr. Lustig's overall solution just sounds like more social engineering and tinkering through law and regulation, because ultimately he ends talking about a sugar tax and about how we were able to get people to start wearing seatbelts. And this is where I am vehemently against any type of social engineering or force to get people to do what you want them to do. Education he downgrades as being an important solution. I think education is the key.
As I was saying, Dr. Robert Lustig's solution, he seemed to put down education as being a viable option because he didn't feel like people could learn. He looked at areas in history where it doesn't work out that way, where professors don't get tenure because they focus on teaching their students rather than writing a book or something that would allow them to get their tenure. Well, I'm not going to worry about what I have to do to jump through the hoops of the world. Probably one of the reasons why my channel hasn't grown as much as some people think it should have. You'll notice that I don't mention a lot of things about reminding you to like and subscribe and to share with your friends and all of that stuff, because I feel like if this means enough to you, you're going to do that without me having to ask all the time. And also, I believe that you're not promoted if the Lord doesn't promote you. So I just do what I do and then hope for the best. But like I mentioned before, I'm thankful for all my subscribers. I'm thankful for all of you who buy the products that I'm affiliated with. And I'm thankful for my patrons, because you do make a difference. And you give me the ability to realize that it's going to get better. And I'm still not going to be begging for that kind of thing. But I do like to thank you for it, because I think it's important to let you know that the things you guys do when you buy the products that I recommend and they give me a small commission, it helps. It helps me have time to do this, because I got a family to take care of. And it's hard to dedicate a lot of time to this, especially with as much as I work lately. I mean, I'm working between 45 and 55 hours a week. And this is technically a part-time job, so I'm thankful to have those hours. The thing about education is, to me, that's the key. That's what's allowed my wife and I to break free from the norms and standards of our society to raise our children. We homeschool our children. And many of you have commented on how well behaved Levi and Luke are. I think that has a great amount to do with the fact that we didn't let the state raise them. We didn't let other people's children raise our children. We raised our children. They're comfortable talking to adults. They're comfortable in their own skin. And they're very well socialized. And they know who they like and who they don't like. So that's just one example. But that education for them has helped out. The key is what's going to spark you to want to get that education. For me, the education on my food was getting that warning that I'm going to lose everything if I don't do something about my health. And I know many of you are facing the same thing, because what we've gone through in the past 2 to 3 years has really put it to our health in a lot of ways, especially if you've been stuck indoors and eating a whole bunch of processed food like a lot of people have been. But I truly believe that if I can do what I've done with my body and my mind through this diet, then you can too. And I've been documenting as much as I can to share as much as I can that a regular guy in a regular situation without a whole lot of resources can make this work and change your life. Change your life into what you want it to be rather than what you've just accepted it to be. And just lastly, I want to touch briefly on the spiritual side. What it comes down to is I've been able to find that I can obey the Lord. That when I look at the mandates and the commandments, and I would realize where I fell short in the past and make excuses for myself, the diet has helped me to weed those things out. Like I mentioned on the mental side, to be able to break the chains that they had on me. I mean, there was a time I was spending $200 a month on vape alone, and now that's zero for me, and I don't need it. I was spending a lot of money on other things that I mentioned before. Now I don't spend money on any of those things. Those were wasters, time wasters and money wasters, taking time and money away from me and my family. Time that I could have been spending with them and enjoying life with them rather than sublimating and trying to put it all away. I found that the Lord is not telling me don't do this and don't do that because He doesn't want me to have fun. He's telling me not to do these things because there's a true life that comes from being free of all these things, free of all the chains that come from what some company's trying to sell you or what some substance can do for you. I know there are different circumstances for many people out there, and some people are battling with cancer and a lot of other issues, but I think a whole lot more people are just making excuses to do what they want to do so they don't have to face life the way it is.
And this diet has helped me to really face life head on with no fear and with a smile, and to have that relationship with my Creator that I've never had before, because I'm finally getting on board with what He's been telling me to do all along. Treat my body like it's a temple rather than a toilet. If I can do this at age 50 and feel as good as I do, imagine what you can do if you're younger watching this. And even if you're older and you're looking at yourself and thinking, yeah, I've been doing a lot of the wrong things for myself, you can fix it too. The best thing I can tell anybody is that stop watching the news and trying to tell everybody what they need to fix and trying to fix something on the outside, and start looking at what you can fix right here at home. Because if you can get yourself cleaned up, if you can get yourself healthy and clear thinking again, you can lift up the tide in your family. And if you lift up the tide in your family, that'll lift up the tide in everybody that you and they touch. And at some point we can get back to maybe a civilization that is decent to one another once again. If the Lord tarries long enough, then we might be able to get back to that. I personally would like to be hopeful of the future, because I got 2 young men that are about to enter the world, and I want them to be able to have some of the successes and the excitement that I've had in life, but I've also been able to train them on some things that they can avoid, and I'm glad to be able to do that. I hope I've been able to help you guys learn some things from my experiences too. But I'm not here to point the finger or blame anybody for whatever decisions they make in their life. All I'm saying is, you can break those chains. You can get free of all the things that you are doing that are not good for you and are not taking you in the right direction. I know I have. I'm not perfect by any means. Not by any means. But I'm getting better every day, and I know I'm moving in the right direction. And that's all I can ask for, because I'm never going to be perfect in this life. But the closer I get to my Creator, the better life is. And this diet has helped me with that. And I know a lot of other believers that have talked to me about how it's helped them too, but we couldn't quite put it into words. I think this is what I've been wanting to say when it comes to that for the longest time. If you get your body right and you get your mind right, it's a lot easier to get your spiritual life right. I know I didn't say everything I wanted to say in this video, because there's just no way I can fit it all into one video. I know people are going to ask a lot of questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So if you put your questions in the comments, or even better, go back and watch some of my earlier videos. I'm betting I answer a lot of your questions. Keep in mind though, sometimes I say some stupid stuff, because I am human and I tend to go off the cuff on everything I say. The beginning of this video was the first time I tried to really go from notes, at least in a long time. I've tried it once before, and I never felt comfortable talking from notes. I just wanted to be able to talk to you heart to heart about what this diet has done for me and what I think it can do for so many people. Ruminant meat, water, and salt. That was the key to break me free. It can change a lot, that's for sure. Maybe it isn't the diet for you, but if you haven't tried it, it might be the thing you've been missing. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me for a little while. Screw it! Get up and do it!
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
There it is. This beautiful frost-covered landscape and a nice sunrise on this nice farmland out here in Florida. Oh, I love watching the sun come up. It's a great way to get some good light therapy first thing in the morning when it's low on the horizon like this. I can almost look directly at it, but not quite. I don't recommend looking directly at the sun unless it's a real hazy day. You can get away with that, but I'm looking just to the right of the major orb itself. Really wakes up the neurons.